What if I told you that the reason you're still suffering is because you've been protecting the wrong part of you? That the strength you think you're building is actually the mask that's keeping you stuck? Sounds harsh, I know, but listen. If pain keeps finding you, it's not because the world is cruel. It's because your defenses are designed to hide you, not to free you. You've been told to be strong, to move on, to not let them see you cry. But that's not healing. That's surviving. You smile while bleeding inside. You scroll while drowning. And all the while, you wonder why the same wounds keep reopening. Why rejection stings so deeply. Why criticism ruins your whole day. But what if I told you the problem isn't out there? Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In other words, what keeps hurting you is what you refuse to face. But here's the good news. Once you become truly conscious of your inner world and your wounds, your patterns, your shadows, no one can ever hurt you the same way again. Not because the world changes, but because you do. This video isn't for everyone. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that lives inside those who always try to look strong. You know the type, the one who never cries in front of anyone, who always says, "I'm fine," even when everything is falling apart. On the outside, they seem untouchable. But inside, a storm is raging. And the truth is, most people don't want to be admired. They just want to stop hurting. This deep desire to be unshakable doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from pain, from the memory of rejection, from the sting of betrayal, from the echo of criticism that never really fades. The need to be invincible is often a survival mechanism, a way of saying, if I'm strong enough, nothing can break me again. But the soul doesn't heal through walls, it heals through windows. And yet the pressure to keep that image alive is exhausting. It's like carrying an emotional armor that gets heavier by the day. Think about how many people scroll through Instagram pretending their lives are perfect, when in truth, they're just trying to survive the next wave of anxiety. That need to always be okay? That's not power. That's performance. True strength isn't about pretending you're never affected. It's about being honest enough to say, "This hurts, but I'm still standing." Want an example? Try journaling your emotions each night for 7 days. Write what you really feel. You'll be surprised how freeing it is to stop acting and start acknowledging. Because here's the secret. Being untouchable doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've learned not to be ruled by what you feel. That's autodominio. That's the kind of força that Carl Jung pointed toward. Not the brute force of resistance, but the quiet command of self-awareness. And that's where transformação pessoal truly begins. You don't need to carry every weight just to look impressive. You need to understand why you're carrying it in the first place. Autoconhecimento is not just a concept, it's a decision to pause and ask, who am I trying to protect? And why? When you begin to explore these, the more a person tries to shield themselves from pain, the more enslaved they become to it. It sounds backwards, I know, but think about it. When you constantly avoid discomfort, your entire life becomes a maze of escape routes. You're not living, you're dodging. And behind every dodge, fear disguised as strategy. There's this lie we tell ourselves, if I just stay alert enough, careful enough, distant enough, I won't get hurt. But that's not protection. That's a prison. Carl Jung would say that avoiding pain is like locking a monster in the basement. Sure, it's out of sight, but it's still in the house. And it still controls you whether you see it or not. That fake smile you wear at work, the silence when someone crosses your boundaries, the habit of saying, it's nothing, when it's clearly something. That's not peace. That's emotional survival. People think strength means never showing pain, but real dominio de si starts when you stop faking stability. You can spot this pattern in everyday life. Someone goes through a breakup and says, I'm fine, I'm focusing on my career now. But deep down, they're just afraid to sit in the silence. They throw themselves into distractions, Netflix, work, endless scrolling, anything to avoid facing the ache. But distraction is not healing. And silence, when faced with courage, becomes transformation. The paradox is that the more you try to control your emotions, the more they control you. Avoiding sadness makes you more anxious. Ignoring anger makes it explode later. Jung understood this well. Unacknowledged pain doesn't disappear, it just finds new costumes. Overwork, sarcasm, emotional detachment. So what's the alternative? It starts with giving up the illusion, saying, yes, I am hurt, and no, pain rarely starts where we think it does. That cutting comment, the breakup, the betrayal, they don't actually create our suffering. They awaken it. They press a finger right into a wound that was already there, just waiting to be felt. And this is the uncomfortable truth. The outside world only triggers what already lives inside us. When someone criticizes you and you spiral into self-doubt, it's not because of their words. It's because deep down, a part of you already believed them. That's not about them. That's about you. Jung called this the confrontation with the self. The moment when you stop blaming the world and begin to explore your inner landscape with courage and honesty. Think of it like a mirror. Life isn't trying to break you. It's trying to show you what's broken. And if you have the eyes to see it, even your worst moments can become a form of despertar. You argue with your partner, feel rejected, and instead of asking, why? Are they like this? You ask, why does this hurt me so deeply? That's autoconhecimiento in action. But most people don't go there. Why? Because it's easier to blame. It's easier to say they hurt me than to ask, what inside me is still bleeding? Jung believed that transformation pessoal begins the moment we stop avoiding the mirror and start decoding the message behind our emotional responses. You can apply this daily. Next time you feel triggered by a message, a conversation, silence, don't act immediately. Pause. Ask, what memory does this connect to? What story am I telling myself right now? That space between trigger and reaction is where autodominio is built. That's where your força grows. Because healing doesn't happen when the world changes. It happens when your perception of it changes. When you understand that pain is a signal, not a sentence, there's a part of you that you don't show anyone, not even yourself. It's the part that envies, that judges, that rages in silence. It's not your Instagram self. It's not your Sunday best self. It's the you that you've locked away because somewhere along the way you learned it was unacceptable. Carl Jung called this hidden self the shadow, and ignoring it doesn't make it go away. In fact, the more you repress it, the stronger it gets. That sudden burst of anger, that panic when you're ignored, that impulse to sabotage your own progress, those aren't random. They're signals from the shadow, banging on the door of your consciousness, demanding to be acknowledged. You're not weak for having these parts. You're human. Most people confuse morality with suppression. They think being good means never feeling jealousy, never getting angry, never having dark thoughts. But let's be real, you're not a robot. Dominio de si isn't about killing the shadow. It's about inviting it to the table, listening to what it has to say, and deciding, with awareness, who you actually want to be. Let me give you something practical. Write down your top 3 recurring emotional reactions, the ones that make you feel ashamed or not yourself. Then ask, what part of me are they trying to protect? Often, behind every angry outburst is a wound. Behind every harsh judgment is a fear. This is autoconhecimiento at work, pulling back the curtain to see the full cast. Jung warned us, what you do not make conscious will control you, and if you don't face the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It takes the wheel. Suddenly, you're saying things you regret, chasing things you don't want, and wondering why your life feels like someone else is running it. The truth, that someone is you. The version of you you've never met. Individuation isn't a fancy word for self-improvement. It's a radical process of becoming who you truly are. Not the version shaped by society. Not the role you play for family or friends. It's the integration of every piece of you. Light and dark, joy and sorrow, strength and vulnerability. Carl Jung didn't promise it would be easy. He promised it would be real. See, most people chase perfection. They want to be seen as good, strong, productive, enlightened. But perfection is a mask. Wholeness, on the other hand, is raw. It's the courage to say, yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've been hurt. And yes, I still choose to show up. That's not weakness. That's force rooted in autoconocimiento. Individuation isn't about fixing yourself. It's about discovering yourself. The real you, beneath the roles and expectations. You may be a manager at work, a parent at home, a friend to many, but none of those define your essence. Your essence is what remains when the titles fade. That's what desenvolvimiento is really about. Remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. You don't have to become someone new. You have to remember the parts you've hidden. Practical tip? Try this. List 3 traits you admire in others and 3 traits you dislike. Then ask, how do these reflect the parts of me I've rejected or denied? That exercise alone can bring surprising clarity and start a powerful journey inward. When you begin this path, you stop needing approval. You stop trying to be untouchable in the eyes of others, because now you're anchored within. When someone criticizes you, you ask, does this touch truth or just my ego? That's autodominio. That's walking through life with inner stability, not outer validation. And here's the beauty. The more you integrate, the more you radiate. People feel it, that calm presence, that quiet confidence. Nobody wants to suffer. It's human to avoid pain, to escape discomfort. But what if the pain isn't your enemy? What if it's your guide? Carl Jung believed that suffering isn't something to be cured. It's something to be understood. Behind every ache, there's a message. Behind every wound, a doorway. And if you're brave enough to walk through it, you'll never be the same. Pain strips away the illusions. When everything falls apart, you stop pretending. You stop caring about what others think. In that raw space, something new begins to grow. Something more honest. That's the beginning of transformação pessoal. Not in the comfort, but in the chaos. You don't become strong when life is easy. You become strong when you decide to stay conscious while everything inside you wants to shut down. Most people numb it. They run to dopamine, food, sex, shopping, scrolling. But distraction is a trap. It gives the illusion of escape while keeping you stuck in the same loop. You want to change? Sit with the pain. Not forever, just long enough to hear what it's trying to say. Journaling helps. So does silence. Even walking without music, just listening to your thoughts. That's where the shift begins. Jung once said, depression is like a woman, in black. If she shows up, don't shoo her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, and listen to what she has to say. That image is haunting and powerful. What if your suffering is simply a part of you, desperate to be heard? What if your breakdown is the beginning of a desperator? The truth is, we're not taught how to suffer. We're taught how to pretend. But suffering is a skill. It's a spiritual gym. It breaks the ego, humbles the heart, and clarifies what really matters. The people who seem unshakable, to become who you truly are, you must let go of who you were trained to be. That's the paradox. The ego, the image, the mask, the act. It's not the enemy. It once kept you safe. But now, it limits you. Carl Jung saw the ego as a small boat floating on a vast ocean. Useful, yes, but not the whole truth. Real desenvolvimento begins when you dare to sink below the surface. Ego death sounds dramatic, but it's not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet moment when you realize you're tired of pretending, when the applause doesn't excite you anymore, when success feels empty because it was never your dream to begin with. That's not failure. That's despertar. That's the moment the self knocks on the door, the mask we wear, the one that says, I'm in control, I'm perfect, I'm everything I should be. It's heavy, and we wear it for so long we forget it's not our face. Jung taught that healing isn't about polishing the mask, it's about taking it off, even if your hands shake. Because only when the mask falls can the real autoconocimiento begin. You've probably felt this already. That strange discomfort when you're praised for something that doesn't feel like you. That inner conflict when your life looks right, but feels wrong. That's yourself whispering through the cracks. It's saying, there's more, go deeper. That's the cost of autodominio, releasing the false so the authentic can rise. Try this. Write down every role you play: partner, worker, friend, achiever. Then ask, which of these feel true to me and which feel like performance? Sit with that discomfort, not to judge yourself, but to get clear. Because clarity is the beginning of freedom, and freedom is the natural state of the integrated self. Awakening is beautiful, but let's be honest, it's lonely. When you begin to see the world differently, you naturally drift from those who still live on the surface. Conversations that once excited you now feel shallow. Parties feel noisy. Small talk becomes unbearable. That's not arrogance, it's alignment. You're simply vibrating on a new frequency. Carl Jung knew this well. He wrote that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. And when you start your journey toward dominio de si, the language you speak changes. You start craving truth instead of comfort, depth instead of distraction, and that shifts your relationships. You may notice friends fading, people saying you've changed, and they're right, you have. But what they don't understand is that change isn't rejection, it's evolution. You're not walking away from them, you're walking toward yourself. That kind of desenvolvimento comes with a cost, but the reward? Unshakable inner peace. In the silence of this solitude, something sacred happens. You start hearing yourself, your true voice, beneath all the noise. You begin to enjoy your own company. Not in a narcissistic way, but in a whole integrated way. That's the quiet joy of autodominio, realizing you don't need the crowd to feel complete. Here's something practical. Spend 1 hour a week in intentional solitude. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just you, a notebook, and your thoughts. Ask yourself questions that scare you. What am I pretending not to know? What have I outgrown? Those questions are keys. They unlock doors most people never even notice. And as you go deeper, you realize solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's where clarity. What if I told you the most powerful armor isn't hard skin or a cold heart? It's clarity. That the real strength isn't about becoming untouchable, but about becoming unshakably conscious. Carl Jung saw consciencia not as a luxury, but as a necessity. When you truly understand yourself, your wounds, your triggers, your illusions, nothing from the outside can dominate you again. Most people react, not respond. They're walking around like emotional time bombs, waiting for the next disappointment to set them off. But when you're aware of your own patterns, you stop being surprised by them. That's not detachment, that's mastery. Autodominio isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about understanding it so deeply that it no longer owns you. Picture this: you get criticized. The old version of you spirals, doubts yourself, gets defensive, maybe even lashes out. But the conscious you pause, you feel the sting, you acknowledge it, and then you ask, what inside me is being touched? That pause, that awareness, that's forza in motion. That's the philosophia Jung lived and taught. You can practice this in daily life. Next time you're triggered, take 5 minutes before responding. Sit with it. Ask yourself, is this about the moment or about my past? Often you'll find that today's pain has yesterday's fingerprints. Once you see that, you're no longer a slave to your reactions. You become the architect of your responses. Acceptance is another form of power. What you resist persists, Jung warned. But what you accept, that transforms you. When you accept that you're still healing, still growing, still human, that's not defeat. That's awakening. That's autoconhecimento sharpening its blade, carving away the ego's lies. And ironically, it's in this radical acceptance that you become untouchable. You've spent your whole life being trained to survive, but now it's time to choose something greater. Consciousness. Not as a concept, but as a way of being. A radical daily decision to stop playing small, to stop hiding behind the roles you've inherited. Carl Jung didn't just talk about individuation, he lived it. He invited people to break free from the false self and meet the soul beneath the surface. The truth is, the world doesn't want you conscious. It wants you predictable, easy to sell to, easy to manipulate. But when you wake up, when you become aware of your patterns, your projections, your power, you become dangerous. Not to others, to illusions. And that's the beginning of real desinvolvimento, the kind that can't be reversed. You don't need another motivational quote. You need a moment of truth. Look in the mirror, not just at your face, but into your own eyes, and ask, am I living from truth or from fear? That question alone can change your life, because once you've tasted authenticity, pretending becomes unbearable. Let this be the turning point, the moment you say, I'm done being ruled by my past. I'm done performing. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Declare it even if your voice shakes. That's not dramatics. That's the birth of força, the kind that doesn't need approval because it's rooted in autodominio. You may lose people, you may outgrow your surroundings, but you will gain yourself. And that's the most important relationship you'll ever have. Because once you know who you are, not who you were told to be, no one can take that from you. Not loss, not failure, not rejection. Nothing. So here's the choice. Stay asleep, numb, reactive, or wake up. Choose presence. Choose integration. Choose the uncomfortable, beautiful. So now the question is yours to answer. What will you do with this awareness? Will you keep wearing the same mask, walking the same circles, blaming the same people? Or will you finally choose consciencia, even if it costs you comfort, even if it shakes the life you've built on fear? Because the truth is, you can't walk toward your desperator while dragging your old self behind you. You've seen the patterns. You've felt the pain. You know what the false self sounds like, and you know what it costs you. So, what are you going to do about it? Let me hear your voice. Drop a comment below. What truth hit you the hardest? What part of your ego are you ready to let go of? And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, I invite you, no, I challenge you, to subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell, not just to follow, but to walk this path of autodominio, filosofia, and transformação pessoal alongside those who are ready to rise. And if you're truly ready to become someone others respect without even speaking a word,